My Hero Academia is a cultural phenomenon. For many, it's served as the gateway to the world of anime. If there was a modern equivalent of them, My Hero Academia would probably sit among the modern big three. If you walk into a Hot Topic, you're bound to see My Hero Academia merch covering up a section of the store. Although other series outshine My Hero Academia, author Kohei Horikoshi can be proud of the mark he left on the anime and manga industry. However, My Hero Academia isn't exactly a one-hit wonder. Before there was My Hero Academia, there was another series by the same author that failed to make the same impact My Hero Academia did. This series was but a stepping stone for Horikoshi, an experience that he took with him as he created My Hero Academia. With only 16 chapters to its name, today we're going to talk about the manga that walked so My Hero Academia could run. Barrage. I'm not sure a lot of you have heard of Barrage, and I didn't hear about it until Jeff talked about it in his video. After I saw the video, I decided to give the manga a read and see if I could figure out why it was cancelled. That being said, this video is not just going to be me talking shit about Barrage. I don't hate this manga or the author, this is just me stating my opinion to the void that is the internet, so take anything I say as seriously as this wiener dog dressed like a hot dog. Alright, with that out of the way, let's give a little history lesson first. As I mentioned earlier, Barrage is the brain baby of Kohei Horikoshi, author of My Hero Academia. The concept of the series first came about in Jump Next in 2011. Jump Next is the magazine run by Shueisha that features one-shots from both amateur and professional mangaka. After being picked up to run in Weekly Shonen Jump, the series officially began on May 21st, 2012. Unfortunately, the series would fall to bad luck and ultimately get cancelled due to lack of readership. Only running for 16 chapters, the final one was released on September 10th, 2012. And so, the question we're asking and answering today is what happened to Barrage? What led to the series being cancelled 4 months after its initial debut? Well, I've come up with a few reasons, and as I said, you're more than welcome to disagree with me. As for a quick summary of the story, Barrage follows Astro, a kid who lives in the capital city on a planet called Industria. Born in the slums, he adopted other orphans from the street and began his own family, working hard each day to support them. One day, he has a chance encounter with Prince Barrage, heir to the Industria throne. After a case of mistaken identity, Astro takes the place of the prince and must bring peace to all Industria. As easy as it would be to complain about Barrage's story, it's not really fair to do that. I'm sure Horikoshi did have plans for the series to run longer than it did, but it's clear that he was under pressure to have his story gain readership towards the end of the series run. You can tell that the series was rushed a little at the end because of this. So it's not really fair to count this as a reason for Barrage's failure. Rather, it's a product of it. However, there is one thing that I think should be touched on in regards to the story, and that's the end goal, or more specifically, lack thereof. In Barrage, the end goal is laid out as Astro must bring peace to the world of Industria, and more than likely ascend to the throne and become king. The main issue is that end goal is really vague. Is peace achieved by aliens and humans living together in harmony? But most of the aliens we meet are the bad guys, so is peace achieved when all the aliens are eliminated? We, as the audience, aren't able to see what peace looks like. Compare this to My Hero Academia. Midoriya wants to be like All Might and be the #1 hero, and we see this laid out in the first chapter, which is good. We also see All Might punch so hard it literally changes the weather. At the end of the chapter, we see Midoriya getting put on the path towards becoming a hero, and now we have this sort of parallel gauge to use to judge Midoriya's growth. Midoriya wants to be like All Might, and All Might can do that. So eventually, Midoriya should be able to do that, and that's when we reach the end point of the series. With this, we have kind of a loose roadmap towards the end of the series, then everything that happens is a part of that journey. For Barrage, that map is kind of blank because we don't understand what peace looks like, and the journey to get there isn't as completely clear as they'd liked it to be. The reader is unable to picture the end result in their mind, which creates a sort of uninterest in the story because we, as the reader, can't grasp it. That's my only real point with the story, so let's move on. That being said, one of the reasons I think this story kind of went under would be the characters. First, let's start out by talking about Astro, the main character. He falls right onto the shonen pile. Plucky, dim-witted, upbeat, and does his best to support his family. And that's about it. There's nothing that really makes Astro stand out as a character. He falls into that shonen archetype really easily. Even his motivation for going on the quest to save Industria is to protect his family. With him, it's family this, family that. Family isn't exactly a new concept for shonen, and there have been plenty of other stories that have done that, which results in Astro being less compelling. That being said, the best character is probably Tiamat. Tiamat is the vice captain of the military force of Industria and serves as Astro's guard as they set out on their quest. He also serves as his teacher, instructing and training Astro in the ways of combat. As for his personality, I don't think it's far off to describe him as a demo version of Aizawa, as they share many personality traits. Additionally, unlike Astro, Tiamat has a bit more interesting character flaws that only add to his likability. For example, he has this weird fear of women and avoids talking to them or confronting them at all costs. The teacher-student dynamic between Astro and Tiamat is kind of nice, and the two work well together despite having their different beliefs on their situation. We don't learn much about Tiamat in the series' short run, but compared to Astro, he's a far more interesting character. But what about the rest of the leading cast? Well, there isn't any. Most of the series follows Astro and Tiamat. There aren't really any side characters to latch onto, and that I think is really sad, cause not everyone is going to like the main characters. Other characters are either introduced in the first couple of chapters, never to be seen again, or introduced right at the end of the story. Like this female character who's meant to be the girl in the two's group. But by this point, the writing was on the wall. This lack of characters and lack of interesting characters really put a weight on everything else to hold the series up. And one of the things tasked with that purpose is the power system. Shonens are defined by their power system, by the interesting and unique ways they display their characters, fighting the good fight, with series having their whole image based around these power systems. With that being said, Barrage is no different, and the power system in place is something all its own. The power system is something called dark energy, a mysterious power that helps shape the universe. It constantly rains down from outer space invisibly, and through training, someone is able to hold that energy in their bodies and enhance their body's normal capabilities. This power system, combined with the numerous different types of aliens we see throughout the series, this power system had a lot of potential. So what happened? Why did it not stick out as much as something like My Hero Academia? Well, let's make another comparison to My Hero Academia, since I believe it's fair to do that since they're by the same author. In My Hero Academia, we learn about quirks in the very first chapter. Hell, the very first page of the series has Bakugo and company beating up Midoriya with their quirks. By the end of the very first chapter, we see various different quirks of all sorts of types and capabilities. Now, let's put Barrage under the microscope. Dark energy is not introduced into the series until chapter 10. Chapter 10! It may not sound like a lot, but keep in mind two things. One, the series only has 16 chapters, which means more than halfway through, they decided to add their interesting power system. And two, these chapters, as far as I could gather, only came out weekly in Shonen Jump, which means it took 2.5 months for the main power system of the series to be introduced. So for those 2.5 months, weapons are the main power system we see in the series. Early on in Barrage, we learn about the Org, a mysterious weapon passed down the royal bloodline which takes the form of this magical spear thing. As far as the audience knows at this point in time, the power system is derived from weapons and hand-to-hand combat. Now, this isn't a bad thing by any means. Many other series have had success with simple power systems. My previous example of Dragon Ball comes to mind since it's literally punching, hair dye, and lasers. Nothing overly complex. But this leads into the question of what makes a power system appealing in the first place. And depending on who you ask, this may have a lot of different answers. But in the context of what we're talking about today, I think it's projection that matters most. What I mean by projection is our ability as readers to project our imaginations into the power system and come up with our own powers. To steal a joke from a far more famous YouTuber than me, oh boy, it's time for reassess now. Who do I want to pretend to be? Do I want to pretend to be the guy with the pokey stick, or do I want to be the guy who can shoot lasers and fly through the sky? Oh man, what a tough decision. This was really gonna happen. Don't stop, we're in luck now. The ability for us, the audience to come up with our own powers and imagine what it would be like to live in this world is a great hook for the series. Barrage didn't have that hook. So to me, this is a straw that broke the camel's back. And yes, not all shonens have this elegantly crafted power system, but it's clear Barrage wanted to play with the likes of Bleach and Naruto. But with a power system added too late and the alternative being lackluster at best, it all came crumbling down. All of these things, the lack of an end goal, the lack of characters, and a power system that was introduced too late to entice readers may have all contributed to Barrage ending as a mere footnote in shonen's history. That being said, the series did serve a far greater purpose, and that was teaching Horikoshi everything I mentioned in this video. In My Hero Academia, he clearly depicts the end goal of the series. There are plenty of characters for people to latch onto, and the system of quirks is incredible for stoking people's imaginations. At the very least, you should give Barrage a read. While it's nowhere near the top of the shonen charts, it's an interesting look at even how published authors mess up, starting from humble beginnings to the now.